everyone. It's a snowman with tooloud2oldmusic.com. Welcome back to the collection. This week, I have a great guest for you. A good buddy of mine from Tim's Vinyl Confession, Tim Durling. Hey, Tim, how's it going?
It's going really good, John. Thanks for having me on. Congratulations on the channel, and it's a pleasure to be a guest.
Well, thank you very much. I wanted to discuss with you. You have two books, and we're going to talk through one of them on this episode. We're going to talk through Y&T Down for the Count, the Y&T Album Review by Tim Durling. Yeah, you see, my color's orangey. Yours is nice, bright and yellow.
It's
So
probably the lighting.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so this book, it was really interesting because you asked me to be a part of it, and
Yes,
I
absolutely.
and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. That was fun. It got me into a new band, but it was a band I was not overly familiar with.
Look,
Yep.
folks, there it is.
And I need to get that album on vinyl and stuff. So, um, but what was the original idea? Why did you pick Y&T as a topic?
They have been one of my favorite, if not my favorite band, since I first really, really started listening to them in 1990. And they are a band that some people know, but a lot of people don't know. And I've always been confused as to why that is. I always thought that they should have been a big band. They should have broken through in a big way. And that's never changed over the years.
Right.
I've never gotten to a point where, like, yeah, well, I kind of get it. No, I still don't understand. And, you know, as things progress, technologically, it's easier to self publish now. And it just seemed like a good idea. They're a band that, even though they've been around since 1974, there's never been a book about them, and they've got fans all over
Yeah.
the world.
I,
So
I,
any band that's been around that long should have a book. It just seems like there should be at least one book. So,
yeah.
yeah, it was a natural. I mean, that it's not surprising to me. It just turned out the way it did. And through talking to people and realizing that, yeah, there's a lot of fans out there, there's a lot of knowledgeable fans and people that I've gotten to know, like yourself, through the Contrarians and Sea of Tranquility. And I thought I could come up with a pretty good roster of people to talk about this band and what the music means to them.
Yeah, because you do have a great list of people in there. One of the names that popped out for me was Martin Popoff, who actually did the forward of your other book.
Yeah.
Um, any book that he's written so many books, and to have him attached to it, it was like, for me, easy no-brainer there, right there. I'm going to buy that book.
Well, and Martin, I got to give him a lot of credit because basically this book is modeled after his album by album books. I don't have all of them, but I've got his Queen album by album and his Rush album by album. I really like the format. I like the idea of basically, virtually creating this, sitting down at a table with a bunch of people and talking about an album and
Right.
seeing what everybody thinks of it. And I thought, yeah, I can see how this could work. And and I had talked to him. I had talked. I didn't want to. I said, do you ever think you do a Y&T book? And he said, no. He said, I've done a couple of the. He's done a couple of those ye old metal ones, like the 99-cent ebooks that he sells, and so. But he said someone absolutely should do a Y&T book,
Right.
and I think he knew that I was going to take that and run with it. So yeah, it turned out really, really, it far exceeded my expectations, and everybody that contributed, yourself included, really stepped up. And I'm happy to say, like, the book came out in December, so
Right.
it still continues to sell,
Yeah.
and it's one of those, a lot of word of mouth and going on shows such as yours. It all helps, I know, because I'll appear on someone's show and then I'll see a spike of two or three books. Like the biggest, obviously, when it first went on sale, that's when I sold the most amount of books all at
Obviously, yeah.
once. But the sales continue to trickle in, so it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's because I mean, on Facebook and stuff, I don't think I've ever noticed people commenting on Y&T, but since this book came out, I swear it's on my feed. Someone's posting a picture of an album
Your
or talking
your
about it.
algorithms will pick up on
Yeah.
stuff.
So it's out there and people are seeing
Yeah.
it. So another name that popped out on your forward was Mr. Sean Kelly. So how did
Yeah.
you get Sean to do the forward?
I I'm trying to think how I got to know Sean. I got to know Sean. He put out a book called "Don't Call It Hair Metal," which is a great read. It's a really fantastic read. He and I are both the same age, and we kind of look at this music the same way. Like we take it seriously. It's not a joke to
Right.
us. And there's good music and bad music in all genres.
Yep.
And it's a really good in-depth look at what makes this music great and some of the things that make it not so great. And I messaged Sean. We had both been on the Contrarians at different times,
Okay.
just not at the same time. I'm also an enormous fan of Coney Hatch. I
Yeah.
just love Coney Hatch, and he's been their guitar player for the last few years.
Right.
So I had Sean. I emailed Sean. He got right back to me. I messaged him about coming on talking about the hair metal book, and a little while after that, I told him what I was doing, and he said, he said I got to listen to them more. He said, yeah, you know what? Give me some time, and he came up with a great forward,
Yeah.
excellent. Just sums up, I think what a lot of people feel about this band, like how they should have been great, and it's an honor. Yeah, it was an honor to have his input as well.
Yeah. What I liked about it, each chapter was an album.
Yep,
And then you had 3 to 4 people. You would ask them questions and they would answer them. But 4 people would have 4 different perspectives on each album, good or bad. They were
yep.
always different. And occasionally you'd get everybody to agree on certain songs and certain albums. But I just found it interesting how everyone looks at it so differently or hears it so differently, I guess.
And that's exactly what I wanted. I didn't want everything. And some of the questions that I put out there are more statements than anything to agree or disagree with. And
Right.
if you disagree with what I said, if you don't see it the way I see it, great. I don't want that's what I want. I want your honest opinion. And there's a lot that goes into that. It could be when you got into the band. Like Martin Popoff, for example, he was there from the very first album, from the first Yesterday and Today album back in 1976. Now, me, I get into the band in 1990 on their 10th album.
Right.
So I've got a different perspective. And then I've got folks like yourself who weren't overly familiar, but you took up the challenge, and I'm happy to report I think we made a Y&T fan out of you.
Well, yeah, I now have the
Yeah.
earthquake. Hey, but hearing this, I want to get all the individual
You
CDs.
really need all the individual albums for the artwork and the credits, and
Yeah.
especially in some cases the bonus tracks. That there's a good find, my friend. Those
Yes.
first two Yesterday and Today records have never been harder to find than they are now. What does that sticker say on it? Special offer?
Special offer. Yes.
So
Yeah.
what have you got there? That's a London issue of that, I
I
assume.
haven't checked to see where it actually came from.
Well, I mean
Um,
London Records.
oh, London Records. Yeah, it's a London Records.
Yeah,
Yeah. But this, for me to go back to the very first album, because this is the debut,
yeah.
and up through what I've heard so far, they've definitely changed because this was a pure 70s hard rock
Oh,
album.
that is a raw. I mean, that album has been called, as a matter of fact, I think it was Martin Popoff that came up with the term, the spiritual grandpa of the first Van Halen album.
Yeah.
It's recorded live off the floor. You can tell if you were to set a metronome up and the start of the song, Leonard Hayes doesn't keep perfect time throughout, but the band stays together.
Yeah.
It's a really raucous. It's a really good recording for 1976 on
It,
probably what was a lower budget. You
right.
can hear all the instruments clearly. But yeah, I mean, definitely they got more. They got tighter and they got a little bit more polished as it went along.
Right.
But and those first two albums, I think a lot of people had to go back and get those because
It's
they
so
they
good.
they only came out like the one time, like the one vinyl pressing, I would imagine, and they went out of print, and then they signed to another label, so those albums were like forgotten for
Right.
many, many years until CD reissues came along. And of course, I didn't discover them until the CD reissues happened. But yeah, I remember hearing that first album for the first time and just being blown away by. I knew it was Dave Meniketti singing. I could tell it was, I knew it was the band, but it was different.
It was different. Yeah. And I was stunned because I saw it at my local record store. He did a flip video. And I was
Yeah,
like, go back, go back. That was yesterday and today. And then he said he was releasing it that Saturday. I was like, I can't make it. I'm not going to get this album. I went the next week. It was still there. So it was meant for me to have.
it just depends. It just depends. And this is a band that has very diehard fans, but we're in pockets. You could
Right.
talk to 10 people in a row in a record store that all kind of like the same stuff. And I'm just going to guess maybe three of them knew who Y&T were or
Right.
heard the name. Maybe one is a diehard fan. Like there's just the percentage wise, like I said, we're out there, but it's still, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this book. And as I said in my intro to the book, with all the people that participated, I wish I'd known all of you in high school where I was forever having to explain who this band was. And if a band wasn't all over the radio, all over the magazines, and all over the video channels, didn't really matter what one guy thought.
Right.
You weren't likely to make a big difference that way. But um, it's my pleasure to try and do that. I know that you're just one person that's come back to me and said, "Hey, man, I bought a couple more CDs. I bought, I'm looking for these, and I'm looking for this one now." And to me, that is mission accomplished.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
that's
if
all
I'm
I
at a
wanted
store
to do.
now, if
Yeah.
I'm in a store, I'm going to see, if I see a Y&T cassette, vinyl, CD, vinyl, I'm going to grab it now. So,
That's also why I wanted to put, and I think the black and white photos came across really well in the book, but that's also why I wanted to put the album covers here too, so people knew exactly what to look for. And that's also why I wanted to concentrate on the studio albums. And I do have sections for the live albums and the compilations, but I wanted people to know these are the albums, this is when they came out, and this is what they look like.
right. No, it's
You can
great.
do that online, but I've said this many times. If you Google Y&T, sometimes you'll get everything that starts with Y and everything that starts with T. It's not the easiest band to look for, even Amazon.
Right.
You pretty much search by title, then you go to the artist and click on the artist. But sometimes it's not the easiest thing. So I wanted to make it really easy for people to know. Okay, well, this is what I have. Okay, so this is what I'm missing.
Yeah. And I think one of the coolest things of the book is that artwork. You got
Well,
Hugh Syme to do the artwork. And for those that don't know, pick up a Rush album, and that's probably a Hugh Syme
yeah.
cover.
Unless you have the first one or Fly By Night, you're holding Hugh Syme artwork.
Right.
Even if you don't like Rush, if you have albums if you've got Get a Grip by Aerosmith, if
Yeah.
you've got Bon Jovi, New Jersey, if you've got Kiss Revenge, if you've got Queensryche,
Rage.
Promised Land, Here in the Now
Oh,
Frontier,
yeah.
um, it,
White
the
Snakes,
White
1987.
Snake, the 1987
That
Slip of the
logo.
Tongue, the
Right.
Coverdale Page album, Great White Hooked.
This one.
Yeah. So yeah, the way that I got Hugh Syme, the way that it fell into my lap that Hugh Syme got involved was pretty amazing. I was looking for people that had connections to the band. I really didn't want this was never going to be an official book. This was going to be by the fans for the fans. But I did want to talk to people that were on the peripheral. And the main guy that I reached out to, and I never did hear back from, probably didn't see it, this guy named John Taylor Dismukes. Now he's a cover artist that some of you may recognize. He did. I'm trying to think. He does have a particular style. He did Keel, The Right to Rock,
Okay.
The Final Frontier. If you can picture what those looks like, he did Lynch Mob, Wicked Sensation. He
Yeah.
did the Second Winger album,
Oh,
but he
okay.
did Y&T's Black Tiger, Mean Streak, In Rock We Trust. The three of the best known looking Y&T
Those are,
album.
yeah.
And he also did the best of 81 to 85 in their 2010 comeback album, Face Melter. He has a very distinctive style. And
Sure.
I reached out to him and I never heard anything back. But I also reached
Yeah.
out to Hugh because Hugh Syme did the Contagious album cover.
That's the Black Tiger one. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, it's awesome. Black Tiger and Mean Streak, they're just the coolest,
Yeah.
And so much to my absolute surprise, I got an email back from Hugh Syme. I mean, other than Y&T, I happen to be an enormous Rush fan. So Hugh Syme was like, his artwork was almost another component of their music to me. You
Yeah.
hear a song and picture the artwork. It's so evocative, right? And he
Right.
worked so closely with Neil Peart on all of those, all of those, every album, every single, every DVD, T-shirt. I mean, Hugh Syme was the Rush art guy.
Yeah. He was like their fourth member.
Yeah, he's like Roger Dean for Yes, or he was their guy. And
Yeah.
so all I wanted to ask him, and I did, was what he remembered about working on the Contagious album cover. And he said he didn't recall working with the band so much as he recalled working along with John David Klodner, the famous A&R guy
Yeah.
from Geffen Records. And so he gave me a little blurb on that, which is in the book, and that was cool in and of itself,
Right.
just to talk to the guy. And then he said, Tim, have you got anybody designing this book for you, designing this cover for you? And I just,
Wow.
is Hugh Syme offering to design a book cover for me? How does this work? I'm just a one man,
Right.
operation. And I said, Hugh, I said, that's amazing. I said, not only am I low budget, I'm no budget. But he said, well, think about it. It could be fun. And okay, so we talked and we talked, and he gave me a very, very generous deal, which I'm sure is like the equivalent of below minimum wage for someone of his stature. But there is no question that having cover artwork by Hugh Syme, that means something to people like us that
Yeah.
study line, that grew up studying liner notes. Like I grew up studying who designed things and who produced and who co-wrote and all that. And he came back with this beautiful steampunk looking cover
Oh, it's
that just
incredible.
it's just
And
so evocative. And it actually reminds me of his Queensryche work. It
yeah.
actually looks like one of those, the Promised Land or the Here in the Now Frontier with the brownish textures, and that's cool to me.
Yeah.
But what I really like about it is that, like so much of Hugh's work, the more you look at it, the more things you see in it. And my absolute favorite thing when I discovered it, I don't know if my wife heard me let a hoop out of me from upstairs, but when I discovered this on top of the tea,
I was going to ask
the
about that because
vial,
not being
the
a Y&T person with much knowledge for me,
well,
I
I
didn't
looked
know
at that
exactly what them.
and I go, oh, what is that? And then it hit me to Contagious. Because
It's the
if you
broken
hold that record
vial.
cover up, that's the, you could say that's the vial that got broken and spread
Yeah,
all of whatever that is. So I thought, oh, that is just
that's
so
cool.
typical Hugh Simon. It's so cool that it's on something with my name on it. So,
Yeah.
he's got the Y in the background and the T in the foreground. I mean, I didn't give him, I had an idea and it wasn't a very good one. And he talked me out of it. And I said, do what you do, man. And he came back with that. And I said, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's cool. And I
And
love it goes around to the back and
yeah,
it's all
yeah. And the really cool thing too, I mean, these album cover design guys, this is what they do for a living. They don't listen to all of these groups that they work with. It's a job, right?
right.
So he said, I really don't know much about Y&T's music. So some happy accidents happen. There's a moon here in the background. Well, they have an instrumental called From the Moon. There's things like that. Like these are just really cool things that happen. I never in a million years did I think that, I'd have Hugh Syme designing something for me. But and and I know that once people saw it, I know that drove sales. I know it did.
Right.
I'm proud of the book. I'm proud of the contents, but I mean, you got to dress it up. And then, like I said, to people like us, the name Hugh Syme means something, and you just look at that and you go, "That is the cool. What is that? That's so cool."
Yeah, it is stunning. I do love the steampunk aspect of it as well. So,
And even makes a good button. You and I both have merchandise on T Public, and
yeah.
so
I don't I don't have a button. I have to get I just have a Tim's Vinyl Confession shirt.
well,
So
I'll see your Tim's Final Confession shirt, and I'll raise you a
you
Too
had
Loud
too
to Old
loud.
Music shirt. Yeah. Shameless plugs to T Public. We both have merch available through them. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and it was just cool getting to talk to him because Hugh's not a guy that does a million interviews. He's got a really cool podcast called Music Buzz Podcast that he does with Dane Clark, who is the drummer for John Mellencamp, and a third guy whose name is escaping me right now, but it's a really cool podcast, and they've talked to a lot of different people. But um, and Hugh comes at it from the design point of view, and yeah. So I mean that became another component of this that got me more excited about doing this. But to be honest, it's also like, okay, well now I got to sell X amount to, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
It was definitely worth it.
No, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. All right, so we're gonna go into Y&T a little bit. So if someone new was getting into them, brand new, where should they start?
Well, that's a good question. I would ask them, what 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 are some of your favorite albums? What are some of your favorite bands and favorite albums by those bands? If they tend to go for melodic hard rock, I'm going to say something like, if they like Van Halen with Sammy, if they like Def Leppard, I'm going to say, yeah, White Snake. I'm going to say get yourself Contagious or 10. I would say there, maybe In Rock We Trust. If they're a new wave of British heavy metal person, I'd say get Earthshaker, Black Tiger, or Mean Streak.
Yeah.
Um,
Earthshaker was
or
my debut.
or I might just say get the best single disc thing, I think, to this day is called The Ultimate Collection, which Hippo Universal put out in 2001, and that covers everything from the first album through Endangered Species.
Okay.
And that's pretty good. That's a pretty good one disc overview of their sound. You get a pretty good variety of how they progressed.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd say there.
All right. No, I did like in the book after you went through album by album, you then showed all the live albums,
Yeah.
showed the compilations, and then my favorite part was the appearances list of all the
That
things.
snuck up on me. That snuck up on me, John. There were some that I knew about. I mean, there's some obvious ones. Like for me, I knew Dave Meniketti sang on the Hearing Aid single Stars.
Right.
Um, you know, I knew Leonard Hayes, the original drummer, played on Ian Gillan's Toolbox album. But I had to go through Discogs for a lot of them because once it got to a certain point, I just had no idea about a lot of them. Steph Burns, the guitar player that replaced Joey Alves for the 10 album, that guy he's like a Steve Lukather type. He's been on a ton.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
I'm
he's
just
like a
looking here. I
highly
mean,
in demand
it's
studio.
like
Like I
every other
think
one is. There's a bunch of
yeah,
that's just him.
you'll and if you look, it's all over the place stylistically.
Yeah.
It could be Patty Austin. It could be Color Me Bad, Huey Lewis and the News. I mean, he was in Huey Lewis and the News as a touring
The touring
guitar
band.
player.
Yeah.
And for many years, you'll see a lot of listings in there from an Italian singer named Vasco Rossi. Now,
Yes.
that's not a name that means anything to us, but I guess he's a big rock star in Italy, and Steph's been like one of his main band members, and there's a ton of appearances with him. Also, Jimmy DeGrasso on drums. I mean, he's played on a lot of different things, but he's played with Alice Cooper, Megadeth, Suicidal
Megadeth. Yeah.
Tendency, Black Star Riders. He's been, a lot of different places. So yeah, that was really interesting to try and catalog all that. Once I got going on that, like, what have I got myself into?
Because it's never
Um,
ending. You
yeah,
probably found more since you even did the book.
yeah, and what you do tend to notice is that so the original the original four guys. So Dave Meniketti was lead vocals, lead guitar. Joey Alves was rhythm guitar. Phil Kennemore was bass, and Leonard Hayes was on drums. Not so many guest appearances from those guys. It's the guys that came after. So that they had a career before they joined Y&T, and they were in demand as musicians, and it went from there. I mean, at one point, I think Jimmy and Steph were both in Alice Cooper's band. If you watch Wayne's World,
Hmm.
when they do Feed My Frankenstein, Steph Burns and Jimmy DeGrasso were on that stage in that huge movie. So I remember watching that, and this is after Y&T had disbanded for a while, and I remember thinking, well, that's really weird. There's half of Y&T on stage.
So, no, that is cool. I guess probably back then I didn't realize who all the back players were. I knew
See,
Alice.
yeah, it's a disease. It's a disease, the reading the credits and wanting to know everything about, and especially with Y&T, where there was so little information in the pre-internet age that any information I did get, it just went straight into the brain and stayed there.
Yeah. Yeah, Y&T down here, um, they had the big hit with Summertime Girls.
Right.
And but other than that, I mean, actually, I've heard the live album and stuff, and I recognized a bunch more songs than I actually thought I knew. Um, but yeah, and after listening to Earthshaker and Black Tiger and Mean Streak, you start to wonder what the heck? Why did they not get bigger? Because the songs are
Exactly.
there. Maniketti's
Songs are there.
voice is phenomenal. He does
Yep.
have a little Sammy Hagar tone
Yep.
every now and again, but it's not purposeful or anything. It's just,
It's yeah, it's not a copy. They've just got
yeah,
a similar set of pipes. And that's what I tell people. Say, well, what does he sound like? And I said, well, not strictly. The closest I can think of, and about the only guy I can think of is Sammy Hagar.
yeah,
They're in the same tonal ballpark. And and that's right up my alley.
yeah. Oh, I know.
So
Can't beat that.
yeah,
So,
Summertime Girls, it's a big time misnomer, and it's certainly not the only time it's ever happened where somebody becomes well known for one song and it's really not representative of their overall sound. I mean, you had it happen with ballads, you had it happen with Extreme and Mr. Big, but this is an example of yeah, I think it's a good pop rock song.
yeah, nothing
There's
wrong with
nothing
it.
wrong with it, but that is not definitive of anything.
No.
And I've repeated this many, many, many times, but I believe in it. It would be like if the only song you ever heard by Van Halen was Jump.
It is not representative of
It's
them.
not
Yeah.
representative. Good
No.
song, but it's not, if somebody had only heard Jump, but then you played them Unchained or Running with the Devil, you're like, oh, okay, they're
Wow.
heavy. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Um, so yeah, they didn't have a strong record label.
No.
They were on A&M, which was perfectly good record label if you were a rock band like Styx or 38 Special or Bryan Adams. But for a hard rock band that can lean over to traditional sounding heavy metal, I've always wondered what would happen if they'd been on Elektra or Atlantic or Mercury.
Yeah.
You know, Labels that had other bands whose audience would be compatible with Y&T. Um, and of course, with Contagious, they signed with Geffen, which was doing big business at the time, but they'd been around for over 10 years. So it was a case of their age working against, not that they were old at the time,
No.
but the perception within the industry.
Right.
They didn't have, there were good things that happened, but there were just bad turns of events or bad luck.
Yeah.
They didn't have they didn't have a big high powered management. Like if they'd have been managed by somebody like Hugh Prime or Doc McGee, these managers that by name that had clout and could get them on really, really good tours. They did get on a lot of good tours. That's the funny
Right.
thing. It's just for some reason, and it's probably just a matter of degrees, they just never clicked into that next level where people know your name and know who you are and know can think of two or three songs you do right off the bat.
Yeah. And I think part of it's they had no video presence. I mean, it's the MTV era. And that
Well,
to me is kind of
that's a
nuts to think.
that is something that is talked about in the book because they came out with the first two albums in the 70s, Yesterday and Today. Those are kind of their own thing.
Yeah.
It's the same band, but not every band had videos back then. Some did. Some had little clips that got played on, I don't know, late night TV or whatever. But they signed with A&M in 1981. What else happened in 1981?
MTV.
MTV came
Yeah.
on the air. Not one video from Earthshaker, not
No.
one video from Black Tiger. So Mean Street comes out, their fifth album. In 1983, they get one video for the title song.
Right.
So already they were behind because I believe with everything in me, MTV, when they went on the air in August of 1981, there were only so many videos they had access to. If you look at the videos, you can look this up on Wikipedia, list of the videos that MTV played that first day. There's repeats. They
Uh-huh.
only had so many videos. All A&M had to have done was given them a little bit of money, sent them to a soundstage, and shot a video for Rescue Me
Yeah.
or I Believe in You, and they would have gotten played. They would have had to have gotten played just because it was a variety. They played a ton of A&M acts. If you look at that first day, there's 38 Special, there's Squeeze, there's Split Ends, there's Joe Jackson. A&M were providing MTV with videos. It's not like Polygram where they had that really backwards way of thinking, like, oh, you have to pay us. No, that's why
Right.
you never saw any Kiss videos in that first year.
Right.
But um, and then with Black Tiger in 1982, they could have done videos for Don't Want to Lose or Open Fire or whatever. And they wouldn't have to be fancy videos. They didn't have to be big like Duran
Mm.
Duran, let's go to a foreign country and shoot a little mini movie.
Right.
If you think about, I mean, you and I are big Def Leppard fans. We know that part of the Def Leppard story is the impact that that cheap little video for Bringing on the Heartbreak had,
Yep.
because there's nothing to that. That's just a sound. That's just them at a show, and they synced it up with the studio track. They did other songs from High and Dry too, but that's the one that got the play. And all of a sudden, High and Dry starts selling in places where the band hadn't even played. I think one place that's mentioned is Lowell, Massachusetts. What's going on in Lowell, Massachusetts? MTV is on the air. So High and Dry starts selling.
Yeah.
And I'm those lost years, they could never get back. It always seemed like they were behind the eight ball. So yes, they get a video for Mean Streak. They only get one. They should have had at least two.
Right.
1984, In Rock We Trust comes out, their biggest album, the album that would go on to, almost hit gold status. And they had a lot of play with Don't Stop Running and Lipstick and Leather. So there's a video for Don't Stop Running, not a very good one, but a lot of great songs back then had bad videos. Lipstick and Leather had this half live, half concept video. They should have had two more. Summertime Girls was a big video that got a lot of play. Then they put out All American Boy, and that was it for the Down for the Count. They didn't do any other videos. Here comes Geffen Records, for crying out loud, and they do one video for Contagious. One video, one single. This was supposed to be what did it for them. They didn't have the right, whatever powers that be that say, you know what, and it wasn't like they weren't photogenic. I mean, you know what I mean? Like they didn't look goofy on camera.
No, they look like everybody else back then.
Yeah, unless the director had them doing goofy things, but they didn't look uncomfortable on camera. It was the 80s, and I have to wonder what would have happened. But John, what ended up happening is that there's a band now that has one of the most dedicated followings of any band, and you're finding out what it's all about, right? You're listening to this music going, I get it. Where are we going with this?
Oh, we were just about no videos and exposure.
Well, I think the no videos thing did not do them any favors. Something that is interesting, and it never really occurred to me until I started doing the book, was the fact that, with one exception, when they were in their major label days, they had a different producer for every album.
Yeah, that is.
So even though there was a consistent sound in terms of Dave's voice and his guitar playing and Leonard's drums, the way that it was presented sonically was vastly different every time. And they put out an album about every year for first half of the 80s, and as far as the radio airwaves are concerned, like different tones, like, Black Tiger, you don't mistake anything from Black Tiger with anything off Down for the Count. Like it's kind of weird. Most bands would get a producer and stick with them, like Motley Crue with Tom Werman, or Bon Jovi with Bruce Fairbairn, or Def Leppard with Mutt Lange, or Van Halen with Ted Templeman. You'd at least stick with them for 2 or 3 records. But and to me, I think that's record company pressure. They were like, well, that didn't work. Yeah. You don't know that it didn't work. Give it time. Yeah. So every time they're going into the studio with someone they've never met before.
Right.
How do you know if there's any chemistry? Like, I think they should have kept Tom Allom after In Rock We Trust. and he should have produced Summertime Girls and the Down for the Count album. So it would have, you know, and
Yeah.
ironically, the one time they do stick with the same producer is Kevin Beamish, who produced Down for the Count, and he produced Contagious, which I think is a much better produced album. It's just interesting that, you know, there's just so many things along the way where you go, I wonder why they did that, or I wonder why that was that and not this. And I don't know.
Yeah. That's another book. Very.
Yeah.
So, but one thing I found interesting, this is Contagious.
Yes.
Look at the other side. Where's the track list?
Whoa. I have never seen, you know, I thought you were going to bring up something completely different, John. I
Oh,
had an edition of Contagious where the second track on side one is called Boys Night Out, because those do exist,
no.
but most pressings call it LA Rocks. But you've got something more. You've
No,
got one
I've got
that's
something
12
completely
songs
different.
listed.
I've got an anomaly that
Yeah.
they just left
So what
off the
side is
track.
listed?
It's side two.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't even say the side, but that's side two, because side one
Okay. So
is
side
here.
one has the track listing. Okay.
Side two is
I
completely blank.
I've never ever seen that before.
Yeah.
That is crazy. And you
Well,
can't tell, like, it hasn't been like
nothing.
worn off.
It's just
No,
it was
it's
never
complete.
run through the press
It
for
was
the track
never
listing.
stamped with the song titles.
Yep.
That is insane, John. I've never seen a record like that
Yeah, I love
of
it. I love
anybody.
the fact that it's got that flaw to it and stuff.
But next, if you're ever out there record shopping, not CDs, but records or cassettes, pick up, if you see Contagious, pick it up and look at it, because if it says Boys Night Out, that's a little bit more rare, because that song was
Okay.
originally called, well, when it was recorded, it was called Boys Night Out, but because Sammy Hagar put out his album in '87, the one with Give to Live on it, he had a song called Boys Night Out. For some reason, they couldn't call it that. I think LA Rocks is actually a better title. It's more distinct.
Yeah, I like, and mine's LA Rocks.
Yeah, but they do exist.
Okay.
That say Boys Night Out on them.
I
I don't
love
have one.
finding stuff like
Aaron
that, misprints and
Aaron
things.
from I'm sorry, Aaron, your channel's gone. The guy that does Tipsy Tuesdays. He's got a copy where the back cover says Boys Night Out on it.
All right, I'll have to look at that if I see it again, because that's
Yeah,
Contagious is probably one of the ones I've seen more. Like
that makes sense.
that one, I think I've seen a couple of the others from that time period, and in the past I passed them up. It won't happen again. But I'll have to
As
look next time I see it.
like we both, we're both crate diggers, right? We look for used. In my experience, I see more copies of In Rock We Trust than anything,
Mm.
which to me feeds the theory that was their biggest selling album. More people bought that than anything else. But right behind that is probably Mean Street.
Yeah,
So
I love Mean Street. I think
Mean Streak is
yeah.
so good. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
out of the I haven't gotten that. I'm up to about that point because I've started with the beginning and working my way up, and that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
What's your favorite album from them?
My favorite album's 10.
10.
That's my entry point. I saw what was probably the one time that the video was played on Much Music, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, which is one of the many songs that should have been a big hit.
Right.
In that time period, that would have been perfect for radio. I happened to catch it. I thought it was fantastic. And I knew about the band. I did know about the band, but that song did it. I said, okay, I got to check this band out. And yeah, so that was the first, I got that when it, was out for a couple of months. And, like happens so many times with me, I get into a band and they break up. It's happened. That's happened to me more times than I care to remember, but they did get back together. But at the time, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you would like to mention about the book that we didn't cover?
Well, I can tell you that at least two members of the current lineup of Y&T have purchased the book. John Nyman, the guitar player, who's been with the band since 2003, but he's known the band for much longer. He used to tour with them as a background singer. He also played with Eric Martin. the Eric Martin band in the very beginning, and he was in
Okay.
a band called Mile High, which I think morphed into the Eric Martin band. John's just a Bay Area guy. He's been around forever. He messaged me and said, hey, this is great, which was amazing, right?
That's awesome.
And Aaron Lee, their current bass player, purchased a book as well. I haven't heard from Dave Meniketti. That's the goal. I mean, Dave's a sole original guy. He's the keeper of the flame, and
Yeah.
I have not heard from him yet. But I this book was done as a fan trying to spread the word, which is, like I said, all I've ever done is try and
Right.
spread the word about this amazing band. And I'm happy to say I have succeeded to an extent, because when I hear people buying stuff from them and checking it out, it's like that's great. That's fantastic. I would say to anybody, if you even have a passing interest in Y&T, would I like you to buy the book? Yeah, I'd like you to buy the book. But what I really would recommend, if you like a good documentary, a good music documentary, go to their website, Y&T, spell it all out, YANDT rocks.com, and order On With the Show, the Y&T documentary. I think you can get it on Blu-ray or DVD. It is one of the best documentaries on a rock band ever assembled. A longtime fan like myself, I learned so much that I did not know before about the band. It's narrated by Eddie Trunk. There's a disc with all kinds of cool bonus features too. It is amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's what
Oh,
other than getting into the albums, I would say you got to check out that documentary.
yeah. I'll put the link down, or I'll link to it down in the bottom,
Yeah.
as far as, and how can people get a hold of you, where they can see you? Uh,
Tim's Vinyl Confessions on YouTube, or on Facebook, or on Instagram, the same username for all. And I'm in my 10th year of doing episodes now, which is pretty
wow.
amazing. I've met a lot of great people like yourself, and along the way, and I've gotten to interview, musicians I've long admired, and it's been a great ride. And yeah, this grew out of that, really.
Yeah.
It was just a natural progression. So
That's
yeah,
good.
I know I'm very proud of, very proud of this.
I've got 1 month so far on YouTube. So
It starts. That's how it starts.
yeah. I know, with watching, your show and Mike's over Grab a Stack of Rock, and then
Yeah.
Distortion Den and Contrarians. I
Watch
watch
my
all of
earliest
those and stuff.
episodes, John. You'll feel better about anything that you do.
Watch
I
what?
sat way in the corner, and yeah, my early episodes are terrible. Yeah, you learn things as you go.
Yes. You do. I mean, even I've only done like 5 or 6 episodes from doing the first one till now. I guess more comfort starting to set
Yeah,
in, and yeah, it takes a little.
absolutely. You just get better at it. You just I made a mistake. Oh well, made a mistake one other time too. So
Yeah. I'm not editing that. Just
yeah.
move on.
Yep.
So, well, Tim, thank you very much for joining us. I will put all of Tim's information down at the bottom, a link to Amazon if you want to buy the book, please do. It is a great book. We'll show it one more time, down for the count, the Y&T Albums by Tim Durling. And thank you again for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time. Um, and is there anything else that you want to say?
No, just thanks, John, for having me on, and thank you for helping with the book, for taking part in it. And I think it paid off, because what you had to say was great. Your perspective was great, and you're checking the band out, which is,
Yeah.
to me, I couldn't have asked for more than that.
Well, thank you for having me on it, and thank you for being here, and thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Collection.